So today, we're going to decode the real language of modern India's youth. It's a sound you hear all over college campuses, a language that, isn't taught in any textbook, but is understood by millions.
It's not quite perfect English, and it's not pure Hindi either. Instead, it's this vibrant, super fast-paced mix of both, a kind of code that really defines friendships, late-night study sessions, and, well, the entire campus experience.
Just listen to this sentence. Presentation solid tha, but confidence thoda low tha. You instantly get it, right? It captures the thought perfectly. And notice how the English words handle the formal ideas, presentation, confidence, while Hindi carries the emotional part of it. This is the language we're diving in.
And yep, it has a name, Hinglish. But this isn't just some random slang. It's a totally functional and incredibly expressive hybrid language with its own rhythm and its own rules. For a whole generation of students, it's pretty much become the default setting for how they talk. So how did this even happen? In our first section here, The Sound of Campus, we're going to explore why this linguistic blend isn't just some passing trend, but actually a fundamental part of modern student life.
You see, the rise of Hinglish isn't some accident. It's an incredibly practical choice. In a multilingual society like India, it just feels natural. English gives you that professional edge, that sense of status. Meanwhile, Hindi brings in the comfort, the emotion, and that genuine connection. And of course, driving it all is pop culture, especially movies, which just makes this blend feel normal to everyone.
So let's be really clear about this. Anyone who calls Hinglish laziness or broken English is completely missing the point. This isn't a mistake. It's a smart, efficient adaptation to a modern, multilingual world.
And this leads us perfectly into our next section, how movies teach language. Because let's be real, students aren't learning Hinglish in a classroom. They're learning it from the big screen.
Let's kick things off with a classic that basically defined a generation of engineering students, 3 Idiots. That film didn't just tell a story about campus pressure, it perfectly mirrored the sound of a real engineering campus. The movie is just packed with iconic lines like this one, which basically means, the professor said to understand the concept, not just cram. That's what real engineering is. You see the pattern, right? The technical words, concept, engineering, are in English, but the core advice, the emotional heart of it, is all in Hindi. This is what you could call the 3 Idiots effect. The film, maybe without you even realizing it, gave students a formula. Use English for your academic stuff, but switch over to Hindi for feelings, for advice, and for connection. It was like handing them a linguistic blueprint for their own lives. Okay, now let's see how this all evolves with a totally different kind of movie, Student of the Year. Here, the vibe isn't about academic pressure. It's all about glamour, ambition, and intense competition.
And the language totally reflects that. Competition tough hai, but I'm totally ready for this challenge. Notice the structure here? The Hindi part sets up the scene, but the confident, ambitious statement is all English.
So the takeaway here is completely different. This style of Hinglish connects English directly to aspiration, to confidence. Hindi, on the other hand, is what you use to inject a bit of attitude and punch, making you sound cool and relatable.
And finally, let's look at a movie that tackles those bigger life questions after college. Ya Jawani Hai Diwani. This one's all about dreams, careers, and, finding yourself. Here, the dialogue gets a little more philosophical. You have to take risks in life, otherwise the story gets boring. It's a really deep thought, but it's expressed in the most natural way a young person figuring out their future would say it. And so movies like this literally gave students the vocabulary to talk about their biggest fears and their biggest dreams. Hinglish became the language not just for class, but for life itself, for figuring out who you are and who you want to be. Okay, so we've seen how natural, how useful, and how widespread English is, but this brings us to a really critical turn in our explainer, and this is where the real challenge comes in. Let's talk about the real problem, context.
And this begs the question, doesn't it? If this language is so adaptive and so effective, where's the disconnect? Why do so many educators and employers seem worried about it? Well, here's the answer. The problem isn't Hinglish itself. It's the inability to know when not to use it. It is absolutely brilliant for brainstorming with your friends or for informal chats, but it becomes a huge liability in formal settings. Think exams, job interviews, or professional presentations. The real issue is a failure to code switch. So, what's the solution? It's not about banning Hinglish, not at all. It's about developing what you could almost call a modern superpower, the ability to shift between different ways of speaking intelligently.
Let's look at a few practical examples of this shift in action. In a chat with a friend, presentation awesome-the is perfect. But in an email to a professor, that needs to become the presentation was excellent. Concept thoda confusing he becomes the concept is slightly unclear. It's the exact same idea, just packaged differently for a different audience. This is the skill we need to be teaching.
So, the most crucial point is this. Hinglish isn't the villain here. The real problem is untrained usage. Students are already bilingual thinkers. The goal should be to harness that amazing ability, not to crush it.
And this leaves us with a really powerful final thought for educators, parents, and students alike. The goal isn't to be the language police. The real and much more effective job is to teach choice, clarity, and context. Because in our world today, knowing how and when to communicate, that is probably the most valuable skill of all.